Yes.
All right, we are rolling. Everybody have their equipment in place so everybody can hear?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah.
We're all right? Don't try this at home, folks. We are professionals.
Kinda. We pretend.
Yeah.
It really is. We're all just playing make-believe, right?
Yeah.
For the small percentage of people
Less than.
in the Twin Cities area who actually take the time to tune into our little podcast.
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome back. Welcome back to North Wright County Today, the podcast. We are back. We are still here. As I said to Nick, I don't know how we're still doing this, but we are still doing this. And that is Nick Schultz.
Good morning.
Down on the end from Deerwood Bank, and Sam Pfeiffer, the hostess with Mostis here, owner, operator, selfie company, various other ventures. And I am Mike Schomer, your founder and editor and former ink-stained wretch, North Wright County Today. So, man, we got a good show today. I'm excited for today's show. We have promoted Jeff O'Brien for about a month. Jeff is my attorney. He helped one day. We had coffee, and he said, "You know what? You got to do this." And so we did, and here we are. And North Wright County Today is now 10 years old. It's hard to believe that was 10 years ago. 10, maybe 11 years ago. I think it's coming up on 11 years ago.
Yeah.
We sat at a coffee shop and had coffee with Jeff, and mere hours later had articles of incorporation, and here we are as an LLC, and Left Margin Media LLC is the parent company for North Wright County Today, and now have evolved into a podcast all these years later and brought you guys on board. And I know you guys have, Deerwood's worked with Jeff a little bit on various projects and things like that.
Yeah, I knew Jeff
I have not.
You have
kind of
not.
through the craft brewing industry. I've been looking for craft brewing clients and trying to figure out what the best way to bank them would be, and that's how Jeff and I met.
Yeah. So just, we'll get into that with Jeff and his background in business law and just the pioneering route that he took through the craft brewing industry, and now how that's kind of translating into the cannabis industry. So super cool. And we're going to get to Jeff in a minute, but just to kick off today's show, one of the things I was going to talk about, and we were talking about it a little bit off here, is COVID.
Yeah.
5 years.
Everybody's
5 years.
favorite topic. But, it is kind of a milestone to get 5 years past the beginning of it. And one of those where were you kind of moments was 5 years ago this week. And we were talking about, where we were and what we were doing. I was up in Duluth. I was actually with my ex-wife and the kids. We were just kind of, we didn't want to do a huge getaway for spring break because I had been kind of following what was happening. And of course, the utmost concern for me as a school communicator was going to be the impact it would have on schools and what we would do. And no sooner had we got in the car that Governor Tim Walz had a press conference basically saying, steady as she goes. We're going to see how this goes. Mm-hmm. By Sunday morning, actually it was by Saturday evening, it had become pretty clear that it was not going to be steady as she goes. And we packed up the car and headed back. And I had a meeting Sunday morning at bright and early at 8 a.m. at the school. We brought in our entire cabinet, superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of business services. Food service was there because that was one of our main concerns. And before we knew it, we had a plan to get through the first week of shutting school down. And that was the reality we were facing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of other people were a lot farther from home than me.
Yeah.
I think you were out of the country.
We were talking off air. I was in Grand Cayman and kind of had ignored my phone for a couple of days, as you do on vacation. And then my phone started pinging, lots of alerts. NBA canceled, NHL canceled. Got in touch with the office. Things had changed since we had left the U.S. So I spent the next day, which was Thursday of our vacation, rewriting the bank's business continuity plan. Because when I opened it up to look at the section on pandemics, it was about a paragraph long, and it said, everyone will work remotely if possible. That was pretty much the extent
And nothing
of
in
business
place.
continuity plan
Yeah.
for pandemic. So we went ahead and rewrote that piece, and the IT folks worked diligently to get everybody remote access so that those that needed to be remote could be. And then at that point, made the decision to close the bank lobbies and just handle everybody through the drive-up and through remote means.
Yeah.
So my kids were not supposed to have like a spring break, and they ended up sending everybody home, doing sort of a spring break. Hey, we'll kind of figure this out, the 2-week kind of situation. And during that whole time too, Mike was supposed to go on a work trip to Mexico. I was going to join him. And it was one of the situations where like, okay, well, now you're going on the work trip. 30 seconds later, you're not going on the work trip. Wait, now you're going to go on the work trip because still 20% of like those originally going to go on this trip are still going to go. So now we're going to send your wife to go with you, and we're going to pay for her to go so that they can represent the company. And it was this whole ordeal. But the crazy part about it is that I'm like, ooh, this is a virus. If it's airborne. So I went online, and I was probably one of the first ones, probably not one of the first ones, but I bought the N95 mask that we could wear on the plane. People are like, you're going to do what? I'm like, yeah. You know, you're in this box with a bunch of people breathing in everybody's air.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm going to take that. So yeah, we wore them on the plane. I'm sure we got eyeballs. And then on the way home from Mexico, everyone's like, oh yeah.
A little bit different.
Yeah.
Probably a smart idea. Yeah.
Everybody had it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's odd to think about it. You know, obviously with the world we're living in now, we know the reaction probably would have been different had we known what we know.
Yeah.
That said, it was, in the initial months, it was cool to see the community come together and the creative things people did to keep each other entertained, and the way the school district came together, school districts around the state to feed families and to keep kids engaged the best they can. Obviously, you know, we've learned since that through data and things like that, it was not enough, but it was what we could do with what we had. So it's just interesting to, you know, as Dark Star used to say, down memory lane we go. and that's
It's
kind
funny.
of what we
The
do.
older I get, I can't really remember what I did yesterday, but you can remember like these major like events of like exactly where you were in the little details.
Yes.
Like, but I don't know where my car keys are ever.
You know, and that is definitely one of them. I mean, you think of the things, you know, obviously 9/11 and space shuttle incidents and things like that, but COVID and the announcements of things just, you know, people saying things are not going to be the way they are, and that was a huge interruption and obviously a milestone. And so glad we've moved past it, but I also think the resolve in our community and things that, like I said, the innovative ways we kind of came together, found ways to do things together has definitely taught us lessons going forward. So, all right, well,
I'll step out.
we're gonna say thanks, Sam. We'll bring her back, but we're gonna do a quick ad read as we bring in Jeff. So, all right, one of the people that bring you North Wright County Today, the podcast, is Stellus Health and StellusHealth.com. We love Stellus Health. They've been a partner with us for many, many years, and they have locations out there in Buffalo and Monticello. Look, at Stellus Health, you're not just a patient, you're a person, and you're not just a person, you're a neighbor. Stellus Health is in and around our community, as Nick breaks his microphone over
Sorry about
there.
that. Tell us.
Sorry, Stellus. Stellus Health is in your community, trusted healthcare partner for all your health and wellness needs, from primary to specialty physicians, common illnesses, medical conditions, and preventive care. They believe in an ongoing relationship with you, and that's essential to keeping you in good health. That's why they're here. Where you need them, when you need them, with clinics in Buffalo, Monticello, both right next to the hospital for same-day appointments, urgent care, too, blogs, everything else. Check out stellushealth.com. All right. Welcome, Jeff.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Jeff is no stranger to podcasts. And radio shows, and he appears often with my friend and former, my daughter's former kind of curmudgeon-y coach, Bob Sansevier. And we love Bob, and Bob, of course, is media entity unto his own, and has also really done great work out in Buffalo with things like the Buffalo Rodeo, Buffalo School Board. So just cool that you could come join me and
I was in the neighborhood.
entertain me. We were talking about that. Jeff's right here in the building where we do our podcast every week. This is the satellite office.
This is what I call the Western Command Center. Yeah. So I got a lot of clients out in the Sherburne, Stearns County area, and none of them want to drive down to downtown Minneapolis to meet with their lawyer. So a few years ago, I rented an office up above Health Source and have access to a conference room. So and clients out here seem to love it. We'll get together and we'll, meet and do document signings, do everything just over here. So when my clients want me downtown, I go down to the IDS. When they want me out here, I go out here. And when I just need to be away from everybody, hang out here, draft stuff, all that kind of
So does it mean Andy's your landlord?
Yeah. Well,
oh boy,
Andy and Christine, yes, yes.
Yeah, we'll say more. It's Christine than Andy probably. I would put that on her. She takes the lead on that, I think, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome and thank you for coming. I think there's a couple reasons I wanted to catch up with you. The first was to catch up with you.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked together a long time. We've done things together. We talk and text more than most people know.
Yep.
And then really to catch up with you on the innovations and the machinations of moving the state moving forward with the cannabis industry,
Yep.
which will obviously have an impact on our communities. I wanted to get in first with just kind of your work with the brewery industry. Obviously, Rogers getting a brewery is probably the newest one to pop up in our area. We're kind of in a point right now where it's a little wavy. You've got some shutting down, you've got some popping up. I feel like that's normal for any industry, but I think some of the alarmists are like, are we reaching saturation there, or are we, what is it going to be like for the next 5-6 years for that industry?
It's a good question, and I'm glad that you started the show talking about the anniversary of COVID and the pandemic, because that changed a lot of things for that industry. You had a lot of breweries that were relying mainly on the tap room as their source of revenue,
right?
And because of that, pivoted during the pandemic into more of a distribution model, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my clients, Modest Brewing, was a good example of that. They changed like mid-course and became a lot bigger because of it. So there was a little bit of evolution in that regard because of the pandemic and rethinking that, and also a lot of the customers, the clientele that had gone to the tap room, they grew up, they got married, they maybe moved further out from the core cities, and that wasn't their thing anymore. And so on top of that, you have with the rise of the cannabis industry. First in this state we had the intoxicating hemp law that allowed for the THC derived from hemp, those products, the gummies and the beverages, and that has really changed again the brewery landscape.
Yep.
And the breweries that have taken advantage of that learned how to do that innovated and are out there with those products. I've asked a few of my clients, what percentage of your revenues are those THC beverages now, and every single one of them answers the same. Take a guess.
It's got to be about half.
70%.
Oh my goodness.
Unbelievable.
70% of their revenues are coming from the hemp beverages, which is why they were preserved. There's this kind of antagonistic relationship between the hemp and the cannabis industries. But when the state legalized adult use cannabis, that's how you ended up with low potency hemp edible licenses as part of it, in large part to preserve what the breweries were already doing. So
Very interesting.
So yeah, so there's a few, there's breweries that are coming, there's breweries that are going, there's some some sales and purchases going on. It is difficult because there are still restrictions on the manufacturing tier in our liquor laws. You can only have one tap room, so if a brewery's going out of business, if it's mainly a tap room business, not a lot of attraction unless you're a startup that wants to come on, take over and an ongoing business.
Right.
Because some of the bigger breweries is like, well, we already have a production facility. We don't need another one in some storefront and wherever. So I was just on the phone with somebody this morning and remarking, having now gone through the first round of the cannabis license application process, and some of it's ironically, I think it's more permissive in the cannabis industry, some of the integration, than what we've allowed in the brewery industry. And I'll be curious because when the last round of reforms to the brewing laws was 2022, and there was this part of it was this sort of unwritten agreement of they were going to take a break for 5 years on law changes. We're going to agree to these things and don't come back for 5 years. So we're going to come up with 2 years from now. I think you're going to see some of the smaller breweries saying, well, how come a cannabis micro business can do whatever they want to do,
Right.
and we can't make booze and wine?
Right.
So I think we're going to see some interesting dynamics in a couple of years when I think they're going to try to ask for some equity in that sense of, hey, if we're a small operator, just like a micro business here, why can't we have more permissions versus like the bigger operators? So stay tuned for that. That should be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we first met, you were mentioning how arcane Minnesota's liquor laws were.
Yeah.
And
It just happens, I think, kind of organically, because if you look at compared to, say, Wisconsin, where I also practice, Wisconsin is far more permissive in the manufacturing tier than what Minnesota is. You look at Tattersall, who was here, relocated to River Falls. Tattersall has a full restaurant. They're serving, beer and wine, and as well as their own spirits. Their gift shop looks like a liquor store. I mean, you can walk out of there with a case of booze, right? Wow. But Wisconsin, well, who are the main players there? The breweries. Right? Big breweries. Yeah. Here, we had a lot of the breweries go out in the 50s and 60s and be, a lot of them went to Wisconsin, right? Heilemann bought a lot of brands and took them over to Wisconsin.
Right.
So you had Shells and you had Cold Spring for a long time, and then Summit joined in the 80s, right?
Yep.
But you had all these distributors and the liquor stores and everything. So you just had, by virtue of inertia, you had two other tiers that were here, one that wasn't.
Yeah.
And I heard someone say sometime, if you want to make sense out of Minnesota's liquor laws, figure out who paid for them. Well, you've had this coalition that built up of everybody else, and they were trying to protect them from these big outstate national players, and now it's sort of flipped. And you had the wholesalers consolidating and selling off and getting bigger, and the breweries and all had this crop of small breweries. So, yeah, we'll see how it all keeps shaking out. I think there's a lot to come, I think, in that space as well.
And there's a lot of history in this community, and of course in Monticello with Dahlheimer, but with the distributor and the industry that was here. If you look downtown, some of those old buildings, houses, obviously where homegrown is. Yep. That was a very large distribution center.
That was the brewing industry initially, was in this state, was before you had refrigeration and things like that, you had every town had their own little brewery.
Had a delivery guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Matter of fact, the Dahlheimer distributorship that was in the building that Homegrown is in now, if you look some of the old pictures of St. Michael, you'll see an old style truck outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Cold Spring Brewery as well, Kolsch, things like that they would distribute. So, as you've navigated that, obviously Minnesota legislature, as you've said, public cannabis came on board. Now we're here, and as you said, it was a little bit of a bumpy start with some of the people put in place to guide us, and then not there anymore. And then now we have applications being submitted. You have communities around here, Rogers, Elk River, that do municipal liquor stores that are also talking about doing municipal cannabis. Do you see that happening elsewhere?
This is a unique market, and part of my joining the Hush Blackwell firm in August was in large part because they had a pre-existing national cannabis law practice, and so it's been interesting drawing upon my colleagues that have worked in Colorado or California or New York or Illinois, and some of the reactions that I get from them as to this market and some of the differences. So we had a cannabis meetup event in November at Modest, and my partner had come in from Denver and sees the board with all the beverages, and here's the whole list of the THC stuff. And he's like, "This is wild, man." He said, "You're the only," because Minnesota is the only state that allows that.
Right.
You don't go anyplace else and have on-site consumption of THC beverages. So for somebody coming in that's familiar with the industry in other states and coming in here, that was like mind-blowing for him.
Right.
And so there's that kind of different dynamic and a desire to keep that industry going largely, I think, because it's keeping the breweries going, right?
Yep.
You have the munis and their desire to add a municipal dispensary in addition to the municipal liquor stores, right? And then there's this wild card, which is the reservations. The tribes being allowed to do this. And not only doing it on the reservation, but right now there is the governor is in negotiations on a compact that would allow the tribes to be operating dispensaries off of the reservation.
Right. Yep.
And I've seen a draft of it, and it's interesting because the language of it would appear to basically, if a tribe wants to locate a dispensary off the reservation, they're basically going to be allowed to do it regardless of what any kind of state or local laws are. So you think about it, I was talking with somebody, Otsego has already put an ordinance in place that says no cannabis businesses within 1,000 feet of a school or 500 feet of a park, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Whatever the statute is, and they're within the guidelines, they're within their rights to do it, and it does impact. There is a hemp dispensary that's impacted by this. They can stay as they can't expand to cannabis because of this ordinance change. Well, because of if that compact comes into play, they want to partner with the tribe. The city's going to have no say in that. So it's going to be a really interesting dynamic with that whole piece of it. And you have issues, with the fact that under the federal law, it's still illegal. So, we're drafting loan documents and you're talking about being compliant with, laws except for these. And you have a paragraph of all the laws of the federal government that you're not going to be in compliance with.
We talked a little bit about last week as a banker, we're federally regulated. Cannabis being illegal at the federal level, there are not a lot of banks that are jumping into it. We have a location in Otsego, Minnesota, which is actually on the White Earth Nation reservation, and they were pretty quick to jump into cannabis. And so we had to make sure that we didn't really have any exposure to that entity that they had set up.
Right.
It was kind of a wild time to try to figure out how to deal with that because the rules were cloudy at best that they gave us.
Yeah. So there's some interesting issues there, especially when you're having, I never in packages of loan documents had to draft waivers of sovereign immunity so we can go get the collateral. I mean, it's definitely a different regime because every one of those tribes, every one of the bands has the right to make their own ordinances, and they can do their own licensing, everything separate from whatever the state is doing. So yeah, it's been. it's been interesting. And then we had the social equity lottery that wasn't,
Right.
and we there were lawsuits challenging. There was 1,800 applicants, went down to 600 almost overnight.
Right.
Then I think we had about 5 clients that were applying under the social equity round. 3 or 4 of them made it through, 1 or 2 didn't. So we're like, well, we can't be the ones suing for an injunction to stop the lottery because we can't, screw over our clients that did make it through.
The guys
right?
that did make it through, yeah.
Other lawyers didn't have the same qualm. They brought the lawsuits, and so then the state decided to just cancel the lottery and rolled everybody over into this general licensing round. And so we were working with that last week. I was doing a lot of kind of corporate moving pieces around, shall we say, to make compliant entities, right? Because everybody wants to go into this micro business license. There were about 4 license types that had to go via lottery, and the rest. And then but this micro business license was uncapped. You pay $500. You can have a plant canopy. You can make products. You can sell both hemp and cannabis products. And you can have on or off site consumption, and you can even bring in entertainment, right? You get one location.
Right.
So this is part of what the state's trying to do to keep everything small. They're figuring between the small local operators and the tribes, trying to keep the big national players out of the marketplace,
Out of Minnesota.
right? That's the policy reasons behind it. So I think we had we had one client that was applying for a testing license. Everybody else was going for these micro licenses. Okay. So we kind of eventually were able to cookie cutter the applications. And I think we had about a half dozen clients that we basically took them from start to finish and helped them file the application. We had another equal number that were doing it on their own, but we were maybe advising on like pieces of it or a corporate issue, things like that. Couple of them, about 3 or 4 that came through some consultant friends, and so we just formed their LLC, got their trade name, kicked it back, and we were done with those. So we ended up I think we've got about 18 or 20 clients that are now kind of in the running for it.
Have there been parts of this legislation that were more problematic than others for you as an attorney?
So they overhauled the licensing in the course of 1 year. So there was originally going to be these weighted scores for the various licenses, and they had the definition of what a social equity applicant was. A lot of it's we're not the first one doing it. We were state number 23, so they have the advantage of looking at what didn't work and what did work,
right.
and they're pulling pieces from different places. They ran into a concern. There had been a separate lawsuit on a different statute, the emerging farmer statute, over a claim of discrimination in terms of weighting these scores different ways. So that's what prompted this idea of let's go to lotteries. We're going to do 2 lotteries. We're going to do the social equity as a lottery, and then we'll do some of these licenses for the general, because they're limiting the number of large growers, large dispense. There's a retail license where you can have up to 5 locations. Mm-hmm. That's in the lottery. They're only giving out a certain number of those. Most of the people are going through with the single location.
Single location.
Yeah. So the law itself, it is what it is. If there was one area where I've had frustrations, complaints about, it's the operation of the Office of Cannabis Management. The way that they're operating on their 3rd interim director right now.
Right.
We have yet to have a permanent director. They are borrowing staff from other agencies.
Yep.
Right. And they've got proposed rules out there that they're attempting to actually enforce or use as part of this. So we had a client that had an enforcement action. Long story short, we caught them violating one of their own statutes and a possible 4th Amendment issue on another statute. And eventually, after several months, OCM agreed to just drop it down to a warning and no fine, which allowed our client to go and apply. They were now eligible for a license, right? So, and I've heard that from others in the industry, a frustration of how how OCM is operating. I mean, the license application stuff. We had clients contacting us with questions about what weeks in advance. They didn't put anything on their website about what was going to be required in the application specifically. We had some statutory, items we knew. But in terms of worksheets and, things like that they wanted us to use, those didn't come online until a day or so before the license application process opened, right? I said, we're just doing cannonball run here. We're just going to fire the gun and get going. So
So who's overseeing the oversight?
well, yeah, and so they're so focused on who's getting the licenses that they, to my opinion, coming from another highly regulated industry being liquor, there needs to be a greater appreciation of all the moving parts here, and they need to get this thing up and running faster so that, so we can actually have an industry. Because, the part of this is to try to push down the black market. That's why they allowed the grow at home up front, right? To try to start to work on that. But the more fits and starts that they have on the license process, I mean, who knows when they're actually going to issue this first round of licenses. So the application process is now closed.
Yep.
But all you're getting from the first round is a preliminary approval.
Yep.
And it's not, you don't have, and the advantage of it was you didn't have to have a site secured yet. So you could put in your business, you could have your rough plans and your business plan, your security plan, your proof of funds, your corporate entity, your ownership, all that, right? Now, once you get your preliminary approval, you're going to get to go out, if you have an 18-month window, to go secure your site. And then you come back for a final approval. So we've got some time yet, I think. Plus, the practicality of, for the dispensaries, where are they getting stuff to sell, considering nobody's had a license to grow legally in the quantities that are going to be needed to satisfy consumer demand.
A little window there where they're developing products, so to speak.
And I think the fact that we had adopted the intoxicating hemp law first has been helpful, because what you're seeing if you're at a dispensary now, what you're seeing is the hemp products, right?
Yep.
Gummies and beverages and
Gummies
things.
and beverages, yeah.
Yep, the Delta 9, the 0.3% THC, right?
Yep.
And those,
Tinctures.
all you had to do was register with the state, and that regime stays in place up until the fall, and then they're going to be issuing licenses for what they call low potency hemp edible manufacturer and retailer, okay? But we don't know when they're going to shift from being just registration to, you have to now have a
Actual
license.
license.
So
Will the breweries be grandfathered in on that?
No,
then?
there was an attempt to get everybody grandfathered that was already doing it. That was rejected. So the breweries will need to get manufacturer licenses. We'll need to get retailer licenses. We'll have to get an on-site endorsement if they want on-site consumption. And it's going to be interesting because, one of the requirements of a lot of these licenses is to have a peace agreement with a labor union. On the cannabis side, no big deal. And on the hemp side, the retail license does not require it. And part of it is because the liquor stores screamed bloody murder, we're not doing this.
Right.
You can't make us do this, and so they just let them, let it go. But as it stands right now, and I've heard some chatter that it may be there is some sort of a cannabis bill floating around the Capitol. Lord knows when they're going to get to agreeing to anything, but it's out there. And I heard some rumors that they're looking at maybe removing that requirement for the hemp licenses, because now you're telling the breweries, if you want to keep doing what you're doing, you're now going to have to allow for your workforce to be organized, and there's been a lot of pushback on that in the last couple of years. So we'll see where all that ends up. But I was hanging out with the Teamsters at the Lucky Leaf Expo a few weeks ago. They were there with their peace agreement QR code that you could scan and reach out to them. So I'm like,
right.
All right, there you go.
Exactly was the Lucky Leaf Expo held?
That was at the convention center downtown.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was a lot of different vendors. Some banks were there. A lot of consultants. Some of the manufacturers of the products. But it was like 2 or 3 different labor unions. But the Teamsters definitely have done well in terms of marketing their presence in the space.
For sure.
And they would be very much synonymous with alcohol distribution as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The Teamsters are part of what we call the Liquor Coalition, which is the wholesalers, retailers, and the Teamsters that usually line up on the other side of the manufacturers in terms of any kind of law changes that would liberalize the manufacturers, making multiple products or selling direct and things like that. So, yeah.
So we had Steve Bott, city administrator of St. Michael, on a couple weeks ago. If I'm city administrator of St. Michael, and this industry is obviously coming to my community, what are they doing to prepare, and what's the best thing we can hope for as a community to see down the road for dispensaries in our neighborhoods, things like that?
Well, what I've told clients is if you're looking to locate in a certain city, go talk to the city manager, go talk to the city council now.
Yeah.
Get them to buy into the idea, right? The cities do have the right. They can't, the state law doesn't allow them to outright prohibit dispensaries in their community, right? They have to allow them, and I think they have to allow so many per put the population.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week.
Yeah,
and
I think that's how the state backed into its tax revenue projections, was that you have to have a certain amount per capita in order to reach the tax revenue that they want.
Yeah. So, but cities, municipalities can impose the time, place, manner restrictions. So they can use the zoning laws to specify where they want it to be, right? So
Which
a
it
good
would be
example
with
of
anything.
the idea with the, so many feet from a school or a park or a playground, things like that. Those types of restrictions, the law does allow them to put in place. But yeah, and then yes, they are going to allow municipal dispensaries. So I know a lot of these communities are looking at it as a revenue generator. They said we're gonna open up a muni.
And with some cities receiving federal funding,
Maybe.
Yeah. Possible. So that's the question is, with cannabis still being illegal at the federal level, I think they probably follow the model that what we saw done in White Earth was that they set up a separate LLC to run the dispensary, and the only revenues that were kind of the only thing part of that operation that was touching the city was the tax revenue that came in.
Right, which is what you typically see with the municipal liquor stores too.
Yeah, they'll do something like that to insulate themselves. Yeah.
The one example that we were talking about last week was Edina, and the fact that their entire tax revenue from the liquor stores, which do well, goes to their youth sports programs.
Yeah.
And whether or not you agree with drinking or not, that's a hell of a thing for a community like Edina that has amazing youth sports programs.
Well, and it makes sense for the cities that are doing the municipal liquor stores to pursue a municipal dispensary, because you're seeing the shift from alcohol to cannabis, right, or the hemp stuff, and so it would make sense that they want to try to retain that revenue source. They're going to have to expand out into the other industry.
Yeah. So we're going to take a breath.
Okay.
We'll move on from cannabis. One of the things I love talking to you about, and this is actually how we first met, is your involvement with Minnesota Vikings legends that are still in our community. For those who need the background, years ago, Jeff called me one afternoon and said, "Hey, Tommy Kramer is going to be in town on Saturday. He's going to work with the kids at the STMA football camp. You should come out, get some pictures," things like that. I came out, and there's Jeff, and there's Tommy, and the next year, my kids in the camp and other Vikings came out and did various things. Little did I know, you have connections with several Vikings legends, from Stu Voigt to Tommy to Carl Eller to
Chuck Foreman. Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, the Tommy, it was the catalyst for all of it. A lot of the things I do are purely shameless, self-promotional, and marketing driven, but
Including this show.
but one of I didn't have any profit motive in joining the Tommy Kramer fan club on Facebook. It doesn't exist anymore, but I met his sister and a high school friend. This one he was down in Texas. And they said, you know, he doesn't have a business attorney. He's got some stuff. Can you help him? And that's how it started. And then a partner of mine was working with Carl. And Carl used to have a 501c3, or he had a nonprofit that he wanted to get a C3 status. I'm like, well, I do that. I can help you with that. And that's why I started working with Carl. And then it was like a year or so later, I was introduced to Joe Kapp and worked with him and his family on publishing his autobiography. Exactly. And then after I had those three, then you used to see the posts. It was always on social media constantly about working with those guys. And it just snowballed from there. It got to be a reputation that, he works with, ex-Vikings or Vikings. And I just kept picking up a few more here and there. And, to this day, still work with a good number of them.
Yeah, a golf tournament here and
we
barbecue here, there.
Did a golf tournament for Carl for a year or two. Did a couple for years for Tommy. And, yeah.
What a life, right? I mean, just, to go from a 10-year-old kid with your Vikings helmet uniform.
I know. I have a photo from about 1982 or 1983, and I'm in the foreground with something I built out of Legos. That was the point of the picture. My dad must have taken it. And above my head, it's a Sunday, and the TV's on, and there's Tommy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who would have thought that 15 years later or 20 years later, the geeky-looking kid with the Lego thing, he would be the lawyer for the guy on TV,
By the way, the Hush Blackwell sweatshirt here is throwing out some pretty strong loopholes
I had, it's funny. I was on a Teams call with one of my partners in Chicago this morning, who's a Michigan alum, and he first thought I was wearing. I'm like, no, it's this. It's also got. I call it my Acme Packers sweater, because if you look at the Acme Packers stuff that comes out. So yeah, the new firm is
your wife will like that.
We bring our A game on the swag area. So yeah, this has been kind of fun. But yeah, so yes, I'm not endorsing Notre Dame, Michigan, anything. Just happened to. Yeah, exactly.
However, if you're a retired Michigan or Notre Dame athlete and you need to work with Jeff, he's got you.
There you go.
Well, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it so much, and we'll have you back as these come. Spring to life in our community, and catch us up on what the laws are and what's happening and all that.
Sounds good.
You're not far away.
No. Yeah, you know where to reach me.
All right.
Thanks, thank you.
All right. Hey guys, we're gonna pop into a couple more sponsors here. Peggy Shum, it's tax season, and Peggy Shum is here to help you. And we're getting close to that deadline. I actually have mine ready. I'm going to drop them off tomorrow. We were talking about last week. Yeah, promises.
I already filed an extension. I'm like, I'm not going there.
Yeah, that'll totally be an extension on my end, too. I'll drop them off, but there's no way they're going to have them prepped by the 15th. But you know what? They're awesome when it comes to prep. I drop mine off. No fuss, no muss. They email me a couple questions. This year, I've tried to go back and visit some of those questions, but they are there to help you, and they know those tax laws as well as Jeff knows all these other laws, and they love working in our community because, after all, Peggy's been born and raised here. So if you want personal service, they can do that. If you want to drop it off like me or Nick and not think about it, she does that too. Located in St. Michael on Highway 241 in Town Center. Peggy Shum, CPA, is prepping taxes now. You got tax statements coming out for those of you that are property owners. She can help you with those. Get it done by someone who's local, involved, a lifelong STMA resident, and knows how to get it done. For more, visit cpapss.com. That's cpapss.com. Or give them a call at 763-497-7817. NWCT Podcast is also brought to you by Selfie Company. And Sam's here to tell you how awesome podcasts work because she is like booking up.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So we've added quite a few new podcasters. So That's been great. But we had a birthday party here a couple weeks ago, and DJ Josh Jansen was here, and
Nice.
it was pretty fun. I'm like, ooh, what are you doing the day of prom? Not that we're not busy at all, but I'm like, so we're going to do a pre-prom party May 3rd here.
Oh, sweet.
Josh is going to be here DJing. You can take all the photos. I usually allow... So last year what I did, same deal, 2 kids for $35, so date, couple, friends, whatever, and then parents can come in for free. Or you can book a private party and just hang out with Josh and I and have a good time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And
Super fun.
Chase was telling me, like, through all the exposure and all the stuff, like, you guys are booking up the
It's been good, yeah. It's been really
360s,
great.
like, you're going to need...
Oh, yeah. So day of prom. So we got a call. So we'll be at Rogers prom. We'll be at STMA prom. I'll be getting my daughter ready for prom. We're going to have Josh here for prom, before prom. And then it's also dance competition weekend. So it's going to be nuts. Yeah.
It's going to be a busy one.
It'll be busy. It'll be good. Busy's good.
Sounds like Nick on vacation.
Yes.
Books about 7 different things, tries to get them all done. No. That'll be awesome.
My
It'll be
wife
good.
just sits and reads a book.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. So, Selfie Company, check them out on Facebook, online. Give Sam a call. It's not just prom. They've got birthdays,
cool
like
stuff.
she said. We've got 5-6 months until you juniors that are going to be looking
Graduation
at senior
parties.
year. You want to get stuff booked for your senior photos and do something that is not weather dependent.
Right.
You can come in here and knock out a couple cool shots with some cool backgrounds or do something fun with friends. So Selfie Company, check them out. Last but not least, NWCT is brought to you by Deerwood Bank. What's shaking, Nick?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm going to apologize to my employer for not wearing my Deerwood Bank swag.
No swag this week, but
March Madness has
Yeah.
started,
Oh,
so
man.
I'm supporting Iowa State, where my daughter and my money go.
that's right.
Yeah.
Cyclones play tomorrow.
Yes, they do.
Yep.
I think
So do my Tar Heels.
Yeah.
So they could meet up in the round of 32 if they
could.
both
They
pull
could.
it out.
It looked like the Tar Heels had something to prove on that play.
Yeah, they were a little upset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tuesday night was fun to watch if you're a North Carolina fan, not fun to watch if you're a San Diego State fan. But I particularly enjoyed it
Yeah.
and may have tweeted at Joe Lenardi a couple times.
No, we've had a fun week at the bank just yesterday. It was a really neat experience. One of our current customers, pretty large employer in the area that we've worked with for a long, long time. I think they've been with the bank since we were Great Northern Bank in 1999. Agreed to do a customer testimonial for us. And it was just really neat to sit down and meet with them and hear from them in their words how the bank has positively impacted their business and to see how much they appreciate that relationship. It goes a long way for us because sometimes you don't always hear about the good stuff. A lot of times we hear about the bad stuff in life. So that was just really, really neat to sit down and talk to them about how the positive effects that the bank has had on their business and really how much they appreciate that relationship. So
Sweet.
yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, it is the first day of spring. One of the things I wanted to bring to people's attention, Otsego still does their cleanup day. That is no longer a thing in St. Michael or Albertville anymore. But
So we need to bring all our stuff to a neighborhood friend. Got it.
But May 3rd, 8 o'clock to noon, City Hall. If you are an Otsego resident, you can bring in everything from appliances to paper to bikes that they're going to donate, mattresses, things like that. They're going to have that there. They do recommend you sign up, do some registration there. Just check out the City of Otsego online or on Facebook. That is May 3rd for you Otsego residents, 8 to noon. Fish Rise, keep rolling
Fish
this
Rise.
weekend. If you guys haven't gone to the Legion yet, they
I will
are.
be there. I will be volunteering. The Rotary is hosting.
Oh, you guys are up.
I will be the guy running the fish to your table.
There
It's
you go.
busy.
Yes.
It is so busy, so go early.
Yes.
Yep, go early, get some fish,
Yeah, I think
watch the NCAA tournament. They've got it up on the
Yes, they
screens.
will. Yeah, I think they had north of 300 customers served this
Yeah.
past Friday. So, and with this one, with March Madness, it sounds like it's going to be a big one. So.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
sure.
We sat in like the back room. My husband's like, I don't even know this exists. I'm like, well, I do because,
Yeah.
networking groups. But he's like, what is this room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a fun building in that sense.
Yeah.
With the various places you could actually sit down and eat, including the patio outside. Not quite warm enough yet, but I've had a drink or two on that little porch there. But yeah, get out there, support STMA Rotary, and get that fish, man. Always awesome to catch up with people from around the community. I think, we learn a lot. They share their expertise. Jeff is just, he's such a wealth of knowledge and can talk about it so openly and communicate it well. It's a huge process. It's a huge undertaking for the state to take on anything new like this. If you remember the microbrewery boom, we didn't get into it because Jeff has so much background, but the Surly Law is Jeff's. For those of you that don't know, the Surly Law essentially made it so Surly could be what they are with both a tap room and distribution. Thanks to the law, they were able to expand from their Brooklyn Park location, which had just this very small tasting area, to the Destination Tap Room in Minneapolis. Obviously, Modest, who he mentioned, many other of his clients, many other breweries that we know from Fair State to, nearby here in, Delano and things like that, have also had their, Hayes out there in Buffalo, which is great. And of course, the huge one that's nearby is Lupulin up in Big Lake. Really changed how we entertain ourselves on a weekend. Heading to a destination brewery is a thing.
Yeah, he wrote a article in the Growler, which was a publication for the craft brewing industry here in Minnesota, and it was basically a manifesto on how to set your own tap room up. And he said basically after they published that article, a bunch of people that wanted to set tap rooms up called him and said, "Hey, can you just do that?"
Right.
And that was kind of the start of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised that through his firm now, he's taking the lead on this, connecting himself to somebody that has the background to do this in our state. And again, this will change the way our communities look and feel and as far as things to do for leisure activities, things like that, cannabis obviously being much more accepted, and to be able to go to a lounge and try different things and sample different things and have a THC drink or a gummy or a smoke up, that's going to be a thing. Whether you think it's taboo or not. What's that?
Sober driver.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like you would with the tap room, right? You do have to do it responsibly. We encourage everybody to do that. And it will be interesting how and how those arrive in our communities and what those will look like.
Yeah. I think he mentioned some of the other states that have legalized this earlier. And we actually tried to, from a banking perspective, speak to bankers in Colorado, Washington State, some of the states that had legalized it, a decade ago. And kind of how did you guys kind of wade through this? And the answer was, we're still kind of working on it. Bankers being conservative by nature, I think just not everybody jumped in.
No.
Well, and with the tap room, you have a little bit of an example with a bar. There's not a heck of a lot of different from Modest Tap Room to the North Side Bar nearby. You go in, you sit down, a waitress brings you a drink. There is no template for this existing in Minnesota. You can go to other states and see what it looks like, but you can't just copy the guy. If you're in Otsego, you can't just copy what the guy did down in Maple Grove because
different
isn't.
counties,
It doesn't
different rules,
exist.
different laws, yeah.
So there will be a lot of innovation, and I'm excited for it. I think it'll be, I think people will have cool ideas, and it'll be just kind of a new and different way to enjoy that, if that's your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, what do you guys got? We're winding down here.
Yeah, I mean, state basketball tournament. I think we got Otsego.
Yeah, we jinxed the girls, and then we went and jinxed the boys again too. Theirs was much more
You guys gotta knock on
heartbreaking. Moorhead came and took the boys down by 2 points.
Yep. Close game.
Really good battle back and forth, and the Spuds made it. They did play their first game yesterday against Wayzata, who I think is one of the top teams in the bracket, and took them to the wire, but Spuds fell by, I want to say 6 or 8 points. So Wayzata moves on. A lot of the favorites moved on. Nothing really shocking yesterday that I saw.
Wayzata will play Shakopee, and then Maple Grove will play Great Durham Hall.
Yeah. So good tournaments. Matty Greenway, who we talked about, just like we said, just sailed to another championship and
Just lit everybody up.
has another year left. Unbelievable. So, yeah, man, enjoy spring. It does feel a little bit spring. The sun's getting warmer. The sky's a little bluer. No snow on the ground. We dodged two
Dodged
winter
super
storms
bullets,
in the last week that Nick might have jinxed us earlier, but evidently it wore
I
off.
did not ask Jeff about his snowblower. For those
We
that
did
don't know,
not.
Jeff has a snowblower from, I believe it's 1975, named Toro the Conqueror.
Yes.
It's been running consecutive winters longer than I've been around.
Yeah. Absolutely salute to Jeff's snowblower.
The other day it was like, 70 degrees here? And then next there's like flurries on the ground. My dad goes, Mom, what is that white fluff? It's snow, honey. That's still snow. We're not in cotton season
I
yet.
mean,
It's still snow.
There's the meme that we see every spring where it says, "Dear Mother Nature, you cannot do all the seasons in one day."
Right.
And Mother Nature says, "Hold my beer."
Yeah,
Exactly
yeah.
right. Yeah, well, so this is, we're coming out of third winter, I believe.
In the same week.
Yes.
I was on 38 today, headed over to Elk River, and I'm seeing the orange barrels and orange pennants start to bloom.
Construction season.
Construction season will be upon us very, very soon. Speaking of, if you're headed north this summer, I have great news for you in the sense that the Elk River project is done.
Yes.
I have bad news for you in the sense that the Princeton
Yeah, it's just
project
it's up the road.
is starting. So you're going to have about 15 minutes where you're like, hell yeah, this is great. And then you're going to get to the north side of Zimmerman and you're going to be like, what is going on? And they're replacing all 4 bridges in Zimmerman over the tracks in the river. That will be a pain. So
Up north traffic, here we come.
for all of you that head north to the cabins here soon to get those things open and things like that, know that it's going to be smooth sailing here for a couple weeks, but that project is coming and will create head-to-head traffic in that area. So I'd advise a different route if you can find one. If not, be patient and you'll get there. I go up to Grand Rapids for the 4th of July, that area, and we are looking for different routes.
Yeah. I think my wife is a big fan of taking 610 to 35. And
There you go.
If you can do that, that has significantly dropped the time that it took to take 94 to 35, W to 35. So,
What's your up north destination?
so my in-laws live in Cloquet,
Well, there you go.
or as we say, Cloquet.
Cloquet.
See, I grew up in Brainerd, so up north to me is Brainerd.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that where
anything north, I'm like, oh, that's way north.
do you guys head there for the summer, or what
We
do you?
do, and then my father-in-law lives on Lake Minnewaska.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a great lake.
It's a great lake.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a really good
yeah.
spot. Not hard
Yeah.
to get to. Nice. Well, Next week, we will jump into it with Craig Renz, and his sidekick Caleb will join us. So we'll have
Is there going to be enough room? Caleb's
we're gonna have to rearrange some chairs. Caleb's probably gonna take up half the studio.
Yeah.
Guys,
Play college basketball for those.
Caleb's not overweight. Let's not get that. He is a large dude. He's tall.
Yeah.
And as Nick said, played some college hoop himself. So look forward to those guys joining us next week. We're going to talk about mental health, which is
Huge.
awesome. Yeah.
It's so big.
Yeah.
Especially men's mental health. You know, I don't know. I mean, Mike, you went through an episode, and we can talk about it next week, but I don't think it's talked about enough.
Absolutely not. No. And not seriously enough.
Right.
Like, I think there's a lot of
Oh, you'll be fine. It's just a phase. It's just
flippant
whatever.
remarks. Yeah, that was exactly what
Yeah.
get over it. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I
Yeah.
just watched the new Bill Burr special, and he has a bit about, the only two things that a man can be are angry or fine.
Yeah.
Those are the two options that you got as a man.
So true.
So,
Yeah.
That guy's having a nice resurgence, isn't he?
I just tell you what, the new special is hilarious. Just watch out for the language, but it's hilarious.
One of the sharper guys out there,
Yeah.
Bill Burr.
Yeah.
When you talk about somebody who can bring it not just to one specific audience, but like really make you think about each side of it in a humorous way, but also in a. I think he's probably, and this is, I make it a preposterous statement email or something on this, but I think he's the closest thing we have to George Carlin today. George Carlin was definitely somebody who makes you think and really looked at issues and brought them forward in humorous ways. I think Bill's probably, right there. So
And this new special, he talks a lot about why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
His own mental health.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So, of course, Craig Renz and Stella's Health, longtime sponsor. We thank them. If you want to talk to those guys before they talk to us, check out getcounseling.org online. They've got a location right there in St. Michael, also one out in Annandale, Maple Lake, 24 different professionals to choose from to help you. You can set up a tour, do things online. You can do the virtual appointments with those guys. So Solutions is awesome. Longtime sponsor. NWCT brings you the podcast and an OG sponsor of Northern County Today online at getcounseling.org. And we look forward to seeing them next week.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That was a super fast hour.
Yeah.